Hello everybody, welcome to a new video. Today we are going to continue with our series on the history of Islam, and we are going to explain about different topics that have to deal within the Quran regarding specifically war, money, slavery, alcohol. And when we analyze historically the context in which the revelations took place, we have to look behind in order to be able to ascertain the reason why these revelations were sent down for the Muslim community. And when we look at the two periods in the process of revelation, as we spoke before, the Meccan period and the Medinan period, scholars sometimes make some harsh critics to the revelation of prophecy in Islam and to the personality and the character of the Prophet, meaning his attitude. They say, oh, there is a change. In the beginning, Islam in Mecca was more peaceful, and then in Medina it became more like violent, aggressive, and the Prophet became like a military leader and this and that. And so people make certain critics when looking into the history of Islam. But we have to understand certain things in order to disprove them and to show the context. Because when people look at things out of context, then they arrive at wrong conclusions. And we have to remember that at the beginning in Mecca, it was the very start of Islam. Therefore, the revelations that we find in the Quran, yes, indeed are peaceful, but these are revelations that deal with the principles of the religion that was laying down before the people. The message was in order to explain and set forth the doctrine of beliefs for the community, for this new emergent religion that was taking place, that was taking place in Arabia at this moment, specifically in Mecca. And of course, peace have to be maintained at all costs. The community was a peaceful community. They simply wanted to worship God in peace. They just want to be left alone. But the enemies of Islam kept bothering them. The Quraysh kept attacking, harassing, torturing, and even killing many of the Muslims. And even though in the face of adversity, the Prophet always emphasized to hold themselves, not to fight back, not to pay evil with evil, but to persevere, because at the end their recompense, meaning their God will grant them paradise because of their suffering, even if they have to die for Islam. Now, we understand from this that in the face of adversity, the community always try to keep peace. And even though when peace was not possible at all in Mecca, the community still did not fight back. They chose to leave the city in order to keep and maintain the peace. This is the most important part. And therefore, they moved to Medina. Now, when even after the Muslim community and the Prophet himself have to move to Medina in order to avoid the conflict and to worship God in peace, even though there the enemies of Islam continued to attack and to harass the Muslims, and they seized and took the property of those that left for Medina. All the property in Mecca was taken, and those who remained also were persecuted. And even in Medina, Quraysh and the enemies of Islam continued to plot against the Prophet and against the newly formed community of Islam. They even set enemies and alliances with tribes in order to attack them. Therefore, there was no choice but to defend themselves. And that is why when new revelations came saying, look, yeah, you have to keep peace, but in order to save your life, you have to defend yourself. So the community was facing, in this case, either survival or extermination. Therefore, they had no choice but to defend themselves. And that's why the revelations in Medina are revelations that point for self-defense. But self-defense meaning not to go beyond the strength of the attack, meaning you cannot attack the enemy with a strength greater than what the attack is, the level of the attack. Meaning you cannot go beyond. You defend yourself, defeat the enemy, but don't go beyond that. You always must go back and return to peace, normality. And I will quote from some of these revelations so we can have a clear understanding of this period. And this is why the Quran, Surah 22, verse 39 says the following: permission to fight is given to those against whom war is being wrongfully waged, and verily God has indeed the power to succor them. Meaning, the community was given permission to defend themselves against their enemies. And later on, there is a new revelation that says, hence, if you have to respond to an attack, respond only to the extent of the attack leveled against you, but to bear yourselves with patience is indeed far better for those who are patient in adversity, those who know how to control themselves. Quran, Surah number 16, verse 126. Therefore, this is the new context in the history of Islam. When we look at the history, that they say, yeah, at the beginning Islam, the Prophet was peaceful, and then he became like a military leader. Well, look at the context. At all times, the community always tried to keep peace. Peace. They struggle. Many were murdered, killed. They even choose to immigrate. But even there, they were trying to exterminate them. Therefore, the revelation is, you have to defend yourselves. Self-defense is permitted, but always within a level, a limit, never going beyond. And after that, peace must be sought. I mean, you have to go back to peace. That's why it says in the Surah number 8, verse 61, but if they, it says, when the oppressor, if the one who is attacking you then choose to surrender and wants peace, yeah, you have to make peace with them. Then all violence must end. And the Quran says, but if they incline to peace, incline thou to it as well, and place your trust in God. Verily, He alone is all hearing, all knowing. Quran 8:61. Therefore, here, this is the context where we analyze the history of Islam, the history of the beginning of the community, and in order to disprove the claims of those who attack harshly either the personality of the Prophet or even the beginning of the community. We have to understand the context, and this is something logical even today. If someone tries to provoke you or do some kind of evil to you, you try to keep peace. At a personal level, you try to keep peace. If you are in a place and someone is provoking you, if you must leave that place to keep peace, you leave that place, go to another place. But even if you go to another place and the same person is trying to attack you and entice people against you and to murder you and your family and everybody, you have to defend yourself. This is something logical everywhere. And this is what happened at the beginning of the Islam. Now, something very important also according to the revelations that took place in Medina, had to deal precisely with the interaction with the non-Muslims, either with your enemies or even in a practical level within the society, how to apply the principles and how to behave and what to do and what was forbidden had to be laid down and explained for the community. And this is where we find such important prohibitions such as alcohol, slavery, and interest and usury, and when we're dealing with business transaction and these similar things. And even though these revelations regarding these topics are clear, at the beginning they were revealed or explained in a progressive way. Meaning, at the beginning, the Quran did not prohibit immediately alcohol. No. In the beginning, and I will quote, Surah number 2, verse 219, it says the following. They will ask you about intoxicants and games of chance. It says the following. Say, in both there is great evil as well as some benefit for man. But the evil which they cause is greater than the benefit which they bring. Meaning at the beginning, it's saying, look, yeah, there is evil in these kind of things, there is benefit, but the evil is greater. So right at the beginning, it was not like forbidden by at once. But then new revelation was necessary. And then we have in Surah number 443 says the following. O you who have attained faith. Listen how it says. You who have attained faith. Meaning there is an understanding here that the people have now a new level of understanding. They have more knowledge about what God expects from them. And now it says, do not attempt to pray while you are in a state of drunkenness. Quran 4:43. It's more clear now. You cannot be drunk. So it's clearly showing this is wrong. Now the final prohibition came in Surah number 5 verse 90, where it says, O you who have attained faith. Again we hear that phrase. Intoxicants and games of chance and idolatrous practices and the divining of the future are but a loathsome evil of Satan's doing. Shun it then so you might attain to a happy state. Quran 5:90. Therefore, why was the revelation explained or laid down in this way? Well, we have to remember, in a society, in Arabian society, like it's common in other societies in the Middle East, the drinking alcohol is a common practice even before Islam. And if you prohibit things just like once and very abruptly, some people might not really understand the meaning why behind the prohibition. And you have to try to slowly by slowly make people understand why certain things are prohibited, and to bring them to the state of consciousness that is needed in order to shun it, like it says, completely prohibit certain things. And this is not only with alcohol. When we look, for example, at the dealings with money and these kind of things, also the revelation was progressive until at the end it came to the conclusion that usury and interest, it was forbidden. But it was not forbidden at boom, one revelation. No, it was step by step bringing people to this same level of consciousness. The same with slavery. Slavery was a common practice in Arabia before Islam, and even up to this day in all over the world, it's a clear fact that there's still slavery happening. And at the beginning, the revelation of the Quran, it was not like a one clear-cut boom verse saying it's prohibited slavery. No, it was a clear and slowly revelation showing that at the end it was forbidden. So the message of the Quran is in this way. It's a progressive revelation up to reaching the point in which the message is clear. Alcohol, usury, interest, slavery, all these things are prohibited. But you have to bring people to that level of understanding. We have to remember that the Arabian society was a society that was into many vices at that time, and was the only society of all the Middle East that was still following idolatry, because most of the Middle East either were Christians or Jews, and they were monotheistic or Zoroastrians, but in Arabia they were still in the old ways. So you have to slowly, in a society that even though there were some educated people, in reality the majority of the people were not that educated and will not be able to understand, but slowly and progressive revelation up to the point in which things were completely forbidden and laid clearly and explained in the Quran. Now, there is another danger that the scholars saw throughout the ages and even today, and it's the problem of taking the Quran, some verses, literally. You cannot take all the Quran literally, neither any scripture, neither the Bible, neither the New Testament. If you take every single word literally, you are a fool, and you are really not understanding the context of everything, how it was laid down. And that's why even we saw these verses like saying that there is benefit in alcohol. Someone who reads this, and does not look into the other progressive revelation might think, oh yeah, this is permitted, that's what he's saying. But he doesn't look that at the end it's a progressive revelation. So you have to be careful, you have to examine, you have to look at the context, which revelation was revealed first, the second, third. And remember, the Quran was not, the surahs and the chapters of the Quran were not laid down in a chronological order. No, it's a different order. That's why the scholars have to organize and explain and bring comments and try to lay down in a clear way for the common and the average Muslim the message of the Quran. So the illiterate will not fall into the mistake of taking everything literally and interpret things wrong. And this is one of the dangers even today, that some people, that without the training and without the appropriate knowledge of the commentary of the Quran, but even of the history of the Arabs, the culture, the community, the context, everything, whoever doesn't know all these things might arrive to wrong conclusions when reading the Quran. That's why such a deep knowledge must be, the person must have such a broad knowledge of all these topics to have a approximation of a clear understanding of the message. And the scholars of Islam took upon themselves the great task to explain these things and to make it clear for the average and the common people. But it's also true that some scholars, because of ego and personal reasons, they have twisted the message and the interpretation of the Quran for their egotistical purposes, sometimes because of envy, sometimes because of power, in order to, and sometimes even political issues. And that's why you have the jihadists and Islamists and terrorists who read the verses of the Quran that point and are, some people say, oh, these verses are about violence or are justifying such and such behavior. And it's because of these scholars who on purpose have twisted the message of the Quran in order to serve their own agenda for political purposes, for power and many other things. And this is completely wrong. That's why I'm saying you cannot take the message of the Quran, every single word literally. No, you have to understand the context of the revelation and all the things that we have just explained. But sadly, some scholars, even though they know this, sometimes they might twist the message on purpose because to serve their own agenda. As I explained, those who justify to blow themselves up and to commit terrorist attacks and to damn the reputation of the Muslim community. And they bring verses from the Quran, but still they are twisting the message. The same with slavery. The Quran, in a progressive way, points that slavery is wrong. Even we can bring a quote from Umar ibn al-Khattab, when clearly says, criticizing to some people, saying, how can you enslave someone when a man was born free? Meaning slavery is wrong. Even the Prophet said that in the day of judgment he will be against three persons, and one of them is the man who has sold a free man, meaning thus enslaving him. Therefore slavery is completely wrong. But some scholars, even after this time, they try to justify slavery for gains, money, political reasons, power, main reasons. Even up to this day, it is a reality that in Muslim majority countries, slavery still is present. In African countries, in Asia, and even in the Gulf states, we have modern day slavery, and some scholars in Islam still try to justify these things. And these are the scholars that Imam al-Ghazali points, and he harshly criticized these ulama that on purpose are twisting the message of the Quran for reasons that are personal reasons, and they are bringing very great damage to the community. And these are the ones that Imam al-Ghazali points and says you have to run from these people like you are running from a plague, because these people are like a disgrace for the community in reality, because they are twisting the verses of the Quran and the revelation on purpose, misleading the masses, the people who are not learned, because who are the ones with the knowledge? Who study all the time, the ulama. But the common people just go to pray and to be in peace in the mosque and this and that. But if the preacher is bringing with some twisted messages, He's bringing an uproar in the community and putting some ideas in the mind of the people because of his own agenda. And sadly, some people, even in modern day, tries to justify, like I said, either those terrorists who blow themselves, like ISIS and all the others, and then others who try to justify slavery. And it's a reality that slavery is present, and is present even in Muslim majority countries in North Africa, in Asia, in the Gulf states. This is a reality, and we have to be brave enough to recognize that things still need to be fixed, and that extremists and this kind of people with this kind of extremist mentality exist, and they are using and bringing verses from the Quran and the Hadiths and other, not understanding the context, not understanding the history and other many things that must be taken into consideration, and bringing chaos not only into the community of Islam but also in the world. So in the next video we are going to continue with this series on the history of Islam, and we are going to explain more about the process of revelation of the Quran historically and the Hadith. Also in future videos we will continue to lay down and explain in a clear way for either the Muslim who is listening to what I'm saying, my videos, and watching my videos, or the non-Muslims, because I'm doing this series for everybody who wants to listen. Muslim, atheist, Jew, Christian, anyone who wants to understand and learn about the history of Islam in a clear, concise way. As always, thank you so much for your attention, and we'll see each other in the next video.